Once upon a time, there was a man who had fine houses, both in town and in country, a deal of silver and gold plate, carved furniture, and coaches gilded all over. But unhappily, this man had a blue beard, which made him so ugly and so terrible that all the women and girls ran away from him. One of his neighbors, a lady of quality, had 2 daughters who were perfect beauties. He asked for one of them in marriage, leaving to her the choice of which she would bestow upon him. They would neither have of him, and they sent him backward and forward from one to the other, neither being able to make up her mind to marry a man that had a blue beard. Another thing which made them averse to him was that he had already married several wives, and nobody knew what had become of them. Bluebeard, to become better acquainted, took them with their mother and 3 or 4 of their best friends, with some young people of the neighborhood, to one of his country seats, where they stayed the whole week. There was nothing going on but pleasure parties, hunting, fishing, dancing, mirth, and feasting. Nobody went to bed, but all passed the night in playing pranks on each other. In short, everything succeeded so well that the youngest daughter began to think that the beard of the master of the house was not so very blue, and that he was a very civil gentleman. So, as soon as they returned home, the marriage was concluded. About a month afterward, Bluebeard told his wife that he was obliged to take a country journey for 6 weeks at least, upon business of great importance. He desired her to amuse herself well in his absence, to send for her friends, to take them to the country if she pleased, and to live well wherever she was. "Here," said he, "are the keys to my 2 great warehouses, wherein I have my best furniture. These are to the room where I keep my silver and gold plate, which is not in everyday use. These open my safes, which hold my money, both gold and silver. These my caskets of jewels, and this is the master key to all my apartments. But as for this little key, it is the key to the closet at the end of the great galley on the ground floor. Open them all, go everywhere. But as for that little closet, I forbid you to enter it. And I promise you surely that, if you were to open it, there's nothing that you may not expect from my anger." She promised to obey exactly all his orders, and he, after having embraced her, got into his coach and proceeded on his journey. Her neighbors and good friends did not stay to be sent for by the new married lady. So great was their impatience to see all the riches of her house, not daring to come while her husband was there, because of his blue beard, which frightened them. They at once ran through all the rooms, closets, and wardrobes, which were so fine and rich, and each of them seemed to surpass all others. They went up into the warehouses, where was the best and richest furniture, and they could not sufficiently admire the number and the beauty of the tapestry, beds, couches, cabinets, stands, tables, and looking-glasses, in which you could see yourself from head to foot. Some of them were framed with glass, others with silver, plain and gilded, the most beautiful and the most magnificent that you have ever seen. They ceased not to praise and envy the happiness of their friend, who, in the meantime, was not all that amused by looking upon these rich things, because of her impatience to go and open the closet on the ground floor. Her curiosity was so great that without even considering how uncivil it was to leave her guests, she went down a little back staircase with such excessive haste that twice or even thrice she came near breaking her neck. Having reached the closet door, she stood still for some time, thinking of her husband's orders, and considering that unhappiness might attend her should she be disobedient. But the temptation! It was so strong that she could not overcome it. She then took out the little key and opened the door, trembling. At first, she could not see anything plainly, because the windows were shut. After some moments, she began to perceive that several dead women were scattered about the floor. These were all the wives whom Bluebeard had married and murdered, one after the other, because they did not obey his orders about the closet on the ground floor. She thought surely she would die for fear, and the key which she had pulled out of the lock fell out of her hand. After having somewhat recovered from the shock, she picked up the key, locked the door, and went upstairs to her chamber to compose herself. But she could not rest, so much was she frightened. Having observed that the key to the closet was stained, she tried 2 or 3 times to wipe off the stain, but it would not come out. In vain did she wash it, and even rub it with soap and sand. The stain still remained, for the key was a magic key, and she could never quite make it clean. When the stain was gone off of one side, it would just come back on the other. Bluebeard returned from his journey that same evening, and said he had received letters upon the road, informing him that the business which had called him away was ended to his advantage. His wife did all that she could to convince him that she was delighted at his speedy return. The next morning, he asked her for the keys, which she gave him, but with such a trembling hand that he easily guessed what had happened. How is it, said he, that the key to my closet isn't among the rest? I must certainly, said she, have left it upstairs upon the table. Do not fail to bring it to me presently, said Bluebeard. After having put it off several times, she was forced to bring him the key. Bluebeard, having examined it, said to his wife, "How comes the stain upon the key?" I do not know," cried the poor woman, paler than death. Bah! You do not know, replied Bluebeard. I very well know. You wished to see the cabinet. Very well, madam. You shall go in, and take your place among the ladies that you saw there. She threw herself weeping at her husband's feet, and begged his pardon with all the signs of true repentance for her disobedience. She would have melted a rock, so beautiful and sorrowful was she. But Bluebeard had a heart harder than any stone. You must die, madam, said he, and at once. Since I must die, answered she, looking upon him with her eyes all bathed in tears. Give me some time to say my prayers. I give you, replied Bluebeard, half a quarter of an hour, but not 1 moment more. She was all alone. She called out to her sister and said to her, Sister Anne, for that was her name, go up, I beg of you, to the top of the tower, and look out if my brothers are not coming. They promised me they would come today. If you see them, give them a sign to make haste. Her sister Anne went up to the top of the tower, and the poor afflicted wife cried out from time to time, Anne, Sister Anne, do you see anyone coming? And Sister Anne said, I see nothing but the sun, which makes a dust, and the grass, which looks green. In the meanwhile, Bluebeard, holding a great saber in his hand, cried out to his wife as loudly as he could, Come down instantly, or I shall come up to you. Well, 1 moment longer, if you please, said his wife. She then cried out very softly, Anne, Sister Anne, dost thou see anybody coming? And Sister Anne answered, I see nothing but the sun, which makes a dust, and the grass, which is green. Come down quickly, cried Bluebeard, or I will come up to you. I am coming, answered the wife. And she then cried, Anne, Sister Anne, dost thou see anyone coming? I see, said Sister Anne, a great dust, which comes from this side. Are they my brothers? Alas, no, my sister. I see a flock of sheep. Will you not come down? Cried Bluebeard. 1 moment longer, said his wife, and she then cried out, Anne, Sister Anne, dost thou see anyone coming? I see, said she, 2 horsemen, but they are a great way off. Oh, God be praised, replied the poor wife joyfully. They are my brothers. I will make them a sign, as well as I can, for them to make haste. Then Bluebeard bawled out so loud that he made the whole house tremble. The distressed wife came down and threw herself at his feet, all in tears, with her hair about her shoulders. All of this is of no help to you, says Bluebeard. You must die. Then, taking hold of her hair with one hand, and lifting up his sword in the air with the other, he was about to take off her head. The poor lady, turning about to him, and looking at him with dying eyes, desired him to afford her one little moment to her thoughts. "No, no," said he, "commend thyself to God." And again lifting his arm. At this moment there was such a loud knocking at the gate that Bluebeard stopped suddenly. The gate was opened, and presently entered 2 horsemen, who, with sword in hand, ran directly to Bluebeard. He knew them as his wife's brothers, one a dragoon and the other a musketeer. He ran away immediately, but the 2 brothers pursued him so closely that they overtook him before he could get to the steps of the porch. There they ran their swords through his body and left him dead. The poor wife was almost as dead as her husband, and had not the strength to arise and welcome her brothers. Bluebeard had no heirs, so his wife became mistress of all his estate. She made use of one portion of it to marry her sister Anne to a young gentleman who had loved her a long while. Another portion to buy captains' commissions for her brothers, and the rest to marry herself to a very worthy gentleman, who made her forget the sorry time she had passed with Bluebeard.